Hey, Bruiser Buddies, this is Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty.
Before we dive into the episode, make sure you hit subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Also, follow me on X at The Dave Dynasty and subscribe on YouTube by looking up Nostalgic Dave Dynasty. You can also buy one of my shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com/The Dave Dynasty. Now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to 1 hour of the toughest, roughest wrestling you'll ever see.
That's right, Dick the Bruiser said it all.
The big question, have you got the endurance? Have you got the brains to get past the excellence of execution?
The reason why Axe and myself were put on this earth is to demolish people.
Bobby Heenan, that is a very good-looking sport coat you've got on.
Yeah, and I paid for mine. Mine isn't government issue.
Hello, everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. And by golly, we're ready to go with another big week of championship wrestling.
Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to Wrestling Nostalgia. I'm your host, Dave Dynasty, and this episode we present to you another AWA flashback episode from September of 1988. Now, originally, I was going to have guest Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker on this episode, but he was ill and was unable to record on the day we had scheduled. I have rescheduled with him, and he will be coming up on an episode in the near future. But this week, we return to our deep dive. Again, it's into the AWA, this time for September 1988. I will discuss the TV results, the news and rumors pulled from wrestling newsletters, house show dates, plus I'll include some audio clips. So basically, I'll be giving a chronological telling of this month in AWA history. We started with May of 1988 in this project, and you can check the previous months out in the Wrestling Nostalgia archives. So let's take a little break, and when we come back, we will dive right into AWA September 1988.
Hey, you bums, we have to take a quick break.
Filsinger Games is a tabletop cards and dice game company that has enjoyed success for over 3 decades. Their first game was Champions of the Galaxy and was released in 1986. Champions of the Galaxy is a tabletop game that features professional wrestling over 100 years in the future. Humans, aliens, and monsters battle in the Galactic Wrestling Federation for belts. Legends of Wrestling features officially licensed wrestling cards featuring stars like Ted DiBiase, Jimmy Snuka, Harley Race, and many, many more, including game sets for independent promotions. Each match takes place in real time. The action is fast and furious, and all the things that happen in pro wrestling, like cage matches, outside interference, 3-man tag matches, they also happen in the games. You have the opportunity to run your own wrestling promotion involving either real life stars or fictional characters of the future, or you can mix and match both. Visit filsingergames.com for more information and to order the games today. That is Filsinger Games, FILSINGERGAMES.com to order now. If you like horror movies, be sure to check out Dave Dynasty and Ike Isaacs on the Listen to Their Screams horror podcast. It is available on all podcast platforms and on social media at Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2 in Screams. Hey ho, everybody. Subscribe to the Pinhead Pod, the Ramones fan podcast, bringing you interviews, news, deep dives, and much more. Look it up on your favorite podcast platform. That is Pinhead Pod.
We're back on Wrestling Nostalgia.
All right, and coming into September, we have the same champions in the AWA as we've had in the past. Jerry Lawler is the AWA World Champion. Bad Company, Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka are the World Tag Team Champions. Greg Gagne is the International TV Champion, and Medusa Michelli is the AWA Women's Champion. Just a reminder, there are 2 AWA TV shows. Ron Trongard and Lee Marshall handle the majority of the commentary on the shows. We don't see Rod Trongard as much on this week's episodes or this month's episodes. But Larry Nelson does the hosting and ring announcing and some of the interviews on these shows. And there are various segments on the show hosted by Greg Gagne, which is typically the Matt Classic, Big K Stan Kowalski, which is Big K Knows, but we haven't seen that in a few episodes, and Donna Gagny with Fan of the Week. There is a new segment introduced this month. We'll be looking at that coming up. And by this time, all the TV tapings were being done at the Showboat Arena in Las Vegas, but that does change very, very soon. From what I can tell, the shows have almost the identical lineups now. There might be some small changes here and there, but not as major as it used to be. So I will just be covering TV as a whole, not worrying about if there are any minor differences between the two shows. All right. September opens up on the 1st with a house show in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And then we have television from September 3rd. Larry Nelson opens up and says that Vern Gagne is suspended by Stanley Blackburn. However, he can still do color commentary. The reason that is given is that Vern said too much about the upcoming super secret event that the AWA will be holding. But in actuality, Vern has really said nothing, right? Remember that? He drug us along for weeks on weeks on weeks about this announcement. And apparently, I guess he said a little something, and that was too much for Stanley Blackburn. So he suspended Vern, quote unquote. But yet, Vern can still do some color commentary. But if he says anything else about this super secret upcoming event, well, then he will be pulled from color commentary as well. Oh, my. We go to DDP at ringside with Lee Marshall, and he introduces Colonel De Beers, who is back in the AWA. So let's listen to that audio clip here.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can say what you want about the man to the left of me, Diamond Dallas Page. He has proven to me, I think he's proven to you, he is by far the greatest wrestling manager in the sport today. Diamond Dallas Page with an announcement.
Attention! That's right, baby. He's back. The mercenary himself is back. That's right, baby. And I brought him here. Diamond Dallas Page. Here he is. The mercenary himself, Colonel De Beers.
All right, let me get right over here to Colonel De Beers and find out how your suspension was lifted from the AWA.
First of all, this man had a great deal to do with it. That's right. You know, I swing a lot of weight in South Africa, but with U.S. immigration, I handle very little. But my man, Mr. Diamond, got the job done. You know, I'm here for 3 reasons.
Okay.
First of all, is to recapture what was rightfully mine, the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. I'm sure with his guidance, I'll have no difficulty at all capturing. Tell him like it is, Colonel.
That's number 1.
There's another rumor going around that Jimmy Snuka has plans to make his return.
I've heard
that. I've seen a lot of wounded soldiers, and the fight has been taken out of them. They say they're going to come back, but inside, their heart just won't let them do it.
Good job, baby. He's going to drop them all like a bad habit. You know what I'm talking about.
I've got to
You'll
say
not
this.
Get around to number 3.
He pulled it off again. Diamond Dallas Page.
Rock.
All right, we come back. We have a match where the Top Guns, Ricky Rice and John Paul, defeat Wayne Bloom and Brian Costello with a double back elbow. That's right. Very excited. Wayne Bloom sighting, which that means we've got the seeds planted for one of my favorite parts of the end of the AWA coming up in the near future. If you know, you know. If not, you'll just have to wait till we get there. Larry Nelson then announces Larry Zavon, who says he is joining the AWA broadcast team to host a segment called Celebrity Corner. Oh my. We'll talk more about that in a bit when we get to that segment. Then Manny Fernandez defeated Houdini with the flying forearm, which Manny still lovingly calls the flying burrito. Larry Nelson then clarifies, this is where he clarifies, it says that Gagne was suspended because he talked about the mysterious big event coming up from the AWA. Nelson then interviews Soldat Ustinov and Tijo Khan, who are bragging that they have run Baron von Raschke out of the AWA. Oh my. Greg Gagne defeated Mike Smith after 3 very sloppy-looking drop kicks. I'm sorry, Greg. I love you, but they were rough. Then as we go to commercial, there are comments from Medusa Michelli, who talks about Magnificent Mimi and Wendy Richter. When we come back, we have Larry Zavon in the very first Celebrity Corner. His guest is Jerry Lewis. Basically, Jerry does some of his typical little gags, and he talks about the telethon. Basically, this segment is just a short-run thing here at the end of these TV tapings, I guess just to capitalize in on the proximity they have to some of these celebrities there in Vegas. I don't know if they thought this was going to bring in viewers. I don't know whether they're just trying to fill time. I don't know if they're just trying to do something different. I just don't know. There's nothing here from a wrestling standpoint that it brings in. And I don't know if anybody were flipping through the channel, it would be like, oh, Jerry Lewis, I'm going to stop and look at this. And then continue to watch. I don't know. Just doesn't. I guess it's just one of those things they tried. Doesn't seem to work very well for me. Colonel De Beers with Diamond Dallas Page defeated Todd Becker with his face-first pile driver. Then we head to a commercial with comments from the Top Guns, who talk about how they're after Bad Company in the AWA World Tag titles. Then we have a 6-man tag match with Hector, Mondo, and Chavo Guerrero defeating Mike Enos, Crusher Kruganoff, and Tom Burton with the big splash. There's Mike Enos. There's that other piece. I'm so happy. We've got Wayne Bloom, Mike Enos on AWA television. I can't wait till we get to that. And then we have comments from Bad Company as the show goes to another commercial. We come back, and Larry Nelson wraps up and closes the show. Then we go. There's a house show on September 4th in St. Catharines, Ontario. And then from the September 5th, 1988 issue of the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer says that there is a little further news on the pay-per-view, that big secret event that nobody knows about. Although it does look like they will be changing from the proposed December 26th date. And it looks like it will be a combined AWA-CWA world-class show, and it is likely to be headlined by Jerry Lawler versus Kerry Von Erich. All right, then we have a house show September 8th in Osseo, Minnesota, and we march on to the September 10th episode of television. Show kicks off with Houdini defeating Soldat Ustinov by disqualification when Soldat threw him over the top rope. Houdini, man, you got to check out Houdini. He's all over these tapings that they did in Vegas. He's got some flashy tights. He's got a flashy jacket. He's got some very 80s looking shades. He's rocking the name Houdini. He is just one bad haircut away from being a cheap version of Vanilla Ice here. I'm telling you, wow. You just got to check out good old Houdini. And we have comments from Bad Company on the way to the commercial break. Then we come back with Wahoo McDaniel defeating Wayne Bloom with a chop. And then we're on our way to another commercial with comments from Manny Fernandez. And then, we have the Terminators. Yeesh. Riggs and Wolf, they defeat Crusher Kruganoff and Tom Burton after a suplex leg drop combination. Pretty weak, but, if you've seen the Terminators, watch this episode. The Terminators are just, they're nothing. They're sloppy. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to be nice, but there you go. And then we head to another commercial with comments from the Top Guns. Then we're back, and it's Larry Zevon, Donna Gagne, and Vern Gagne, and they have Don Rickles on this week's Celebrity Corner. Don's a very funny guy. Some of this humor, some of these jokes are a little dated as we look at it now, but it is what it is. And then we have Magnificent Mimi defeating Lori Lynn after a very botched crossbody block that the announcers just call a tackle. That's how botched it was. They just call it a tackle. If it was a tackle, there's no way there should have been a 3 count after that tackle. But there you have it. That's Magnificent Mimi for you. And then Larry Nelson interviews the AWA Women's Champion Medusa Michelli. So let's listen to that now.
Ladies and gentlemen, you saw a magnificent, I don't know what to say, the Magnificent Mimi in a great wrestling exhibition. This lady won a fantastic victory. She has challenged Medusa Michelli time and time again, and I would like...
Wait a minute. Yes, Magnificent Mimi. She has all those beautiful moves out there, but she cannot hold a candle to this fire at all.
Now, you have to admit, she was all over that ring. She had I don't know how many wrestling maneuvers. You can see the influence of Billy Robinson, the great European star who has been training with her.
All right, that's enough. But she does not have the technique. She does not have the experience underneath her belt, and she does not have the brains. It takes a total package, and she's lacking probably the number one, and that is the brains.
There's nobody doubting your qualifications, Medusa Michelli. You are indeed the ladies' champion. You have earned that. But there is the magnificent Mimi, and there is Wendy Richter, and they are screaming.
She's been hiding underneath a rock. She's a has-been, washed-up, still wannabe. And she's chasing me, and she wants a title shot against the great Medusa?
Ladies and gentlemen, Medusa Michelli, the ladies' world champion, not concerned.
This is a waste of my time, and I see they do not have enough time to talk about the Medusa Michelli.
All right. Greg Gagne introduces the Matt Classic. Blackjack Mulligan versus Nick Bockwinkel. Bad Company defeat Todd Becker and Brian Costello after a super kick German suplex combination. It's a very cool looking move. I really like that from the move. You got to check it out. And then Larry Nelson recaps the show and closes it with comments from Greg Gagne. All right, from the September 12th issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer says that the AWA is claiming that they are going to open offices in the Carolinas and Florida. Clearly, now in retrospect, that doesn't happen. I'm sure that's just Vern being Vern and Vern talking about all these big things that they're going to do. He was always doing that. Then they do officially announce that the TV tapings on September 17th, 18th, and 19th will be in Nashville, Louisville, and Memphis. They will be run by Jerry Jarrett and will feature AWA, CWA, and world-class talent, and they will tape 9 weeks of TV on it. So we're getting there, guys. We're getting towards the big pay-per-view. We're getting to some of that combined shows and talent and TV. So, you know, that at least will maybe hopefully spike the AWA just a touch for our interest in the coming weeks. Then we go on to television from September 17th. Larry Nelson intros us in as always and says, hey, Vern's still suspended. And this week, though, he is not on color commentary, as Lee Marshall is joined by Ray Stevens on commentary. We have Jay Strongbow Jr. defeating Tom Burton with a double chop. Larry Nelson then interviews Greg Gagne, who mentions Ronnie Garvin. So Ronnie Garvin coming into the AWA. This is the first mention that I know of that we get from about Rugged Ron. And Gagne claims that Garvin has his eyes set on the international TV champion. That point will be very important down the road. Bad Company defeated Mike Enos and Houdini. Larry Nelson then interviews Bad Company. And Danya Gagne, reads a letter from the Fan of the Week about the American and Soviet amateur wrestling, and I think something to do with the Olympics. And then they have Soldat Ustinov, who responds to the question. I don't know. Don't know the purpose of this, but there you have it. AWA champion Jerry Lawler defeated Mike Smith with a fist drop. And then Larry Nelson interviews Manny Fernandez, who talks about Wahoo McDaniel. And in the clip, he calls Larry Nelson Mr. Microphone. Very funny stuff. Let's listen to Manny now.
Manny the Raging Bull Fernandez, we finally got you back from your bookings from all over the world to be a part of this 3-day event.
You know, Mr. Microphone, there's one thing about the Raging Bull. He's wanted. There's a crazy Indian running around crying about some feathers. There's Jerry the Burger King Lawler. There's Greg Gagne. Everybody wants a piece of the bull. Well, baby, the bull ain't hard to find because I'm coming, and when I do come, you talk about mayhem. When I walk that aisle, baby, and I see that sports circle, there's only one thing better than me, and it's me himself, Jack. Because Wahoo McDaniels, I'm coming. Jerry the Burger King Lawler, Greg Gagne, whoever it's going to be, the bull is coming to town. So you better gear up and get ready. Because when I come to town, a lot of people don't stick around. Because there's one thing. There is great, and there is the greatest. And you're looking at the greatest. When I step in that square circle, there's nothing on 2 feet or 4 feet that can climb in the same ring and stay with a bull. So you remember the saying, Daddy, when you're on the bull and you jump on his back, you're in for a long, hard.
All right, and there you have it. On the clip that I watched, the very end of Manny's promo interview thing is cut off. So you missed the last little bit of it, I guess, on that. So then we have Colonel De Beers defeating Brian Costello with his face-first pile driver. Larry Nelson interviews Soldat Ustinov and T.J. Khan. I was always a fan of Ustinov and Khan, but man, they are so overexposed on this AWA TV. It's just like every show they're on there on some matches, they're on there on interviews. It's like every show. I think they need to pull back a little bit. Same with the Top Guns, right? I know the Top Guns are exciting and they're young and for the AWA are flashy, which is not saying much, but there's so much overexposure. So that's one thing that as we move forward in TV and we have some of that Memphis and Dallas talent on the shows. That maybe that'll help with that, right? Maybe there'll be a better balance, and we won't have to depend on these guys so much to fill so much television time. And then the Top Guns are back on, and they defeat Todd Becker and Crusher Kruganoff with a dropkick. Wow, it was a high dropkick. I believe it was, I'm not sure who threw it, actually. I think it was John Paul, but man, it was way up there, man. It was like eye level. It was a really nice looking dropkick. And then Larry Nelson interviews Medusa Michelli, and then the Top Guns to close this episode of TV. And then we have the television tapings. September 17th in Nashville, September 18th in Louisville, and September 19th in Memphis. And we will get to see the product of those tapings in the near future. I'm pretty excited about that. And then we are on to the September 24th episode of AWA Television. As always, Larry Nelson opens the show for us. Ray Stevens is again on commentary with Lee Marshall this episode. Mandy Fernandez defeats Todd Becker with the flying burrito, as he says. I did not mean that to come out saying, sounding stereotypical, but that's just my impression of Mandy Fernandez in the ring there. My apologies. Larry Nelson interviews Greg Gagne. Then the AWA champion Jerry Lawler defeated Wayne Bloom with the fist drop. Larry Nelson interviews Medusa Michelli. The Top Guns defeat Mike Smith and Brian Costello after a flying clothesline. We go to commercial with some comments from Bad Company. Let's take a listen to those now.
Hey, did you see those two punks Top Guns out there? They wouldn't have a prayer against Bad Company. Now, as far as this big announcement that the AWA is going to make, they've been out here week in and week out, Vern Gagne running his mouth, and nothing has happened. Well, yes, it's a big announcement. And guess what? The Dallas Diamond Page Bad Company has found out about it. Oh, yes, it's a blockbuster. It's the biggest thing in wrestling. Why don't you tell them what it is?
Then we come back with Jay Strongbow Jr. defeats Soldat Yusunov by DQ. After interference by T. Joe Khan, Wahoo McDaniel comes out to make the save. Larry Nelson then closes the show by saying that Jimmy Snuka is on the way, and he interviews Soldat Yusunov and T. Joe Khan. So this is, again, another pretty much a cookie-cutter TV show from the AWA. Again, when we get into October, hopefully this is all shaken up a little bit. We get a little more excitement, some new talent. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens as we look forward into October in the future. The AWA runs a show on September 24th in Casper, Wyoming. Then, on the newsletter from September 26th of the Wrestling Observer. Now, this is after the TV tapings, or at least I think it's the first night of the TV tapings, as of when he is writing and reporting this. So, it does say that the pay-per-view has officially been announced as happening December 13th from the UIC Pavilion in Chicago. It will be called Super Clash 3, even though in the newsletter, Dave says it's Super Clash 2. It's not 2, it's 3. 2's already happened. And the show will be headlined, indeed, by Jerry Lawler versus Kerry Von Erich in a title unification match. Now, all this information was just gathered from the TV taping. It is not out there on television yet. It's not been announced publicly. This is Dave just reporting it from that TV taping. The rest of the card should be announced very soon on the AWA show. Meltzer says the odds are against this succeeding due to the talent on the show as well as it being held on a Tuesday. So the ever-positive Dave Meltzer, ladies and gentlemen. And the combined TV taping that was held on September 17th in Nashville drew 6,000 fans, and it will air on October 1st, October 8th, and October 15th. So very exciting there. 6,000, what a crowd for the AWA. Very exciting. Should make for some exciting TV, a little more noise, a little more excitement. Look forward to that again the first 3 weeks of October. So, all right, that wraps up the month. Let's take a break. We'll come back with some listener questions, and we will close out the show.
Hey, you bums, we have to take a quick break.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85, 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
We're back on Wrestling Nostalgia.
All right, and we're back with some listener questions. First, from my buddy Jason Amos on Facebook. He said, how seriously was the AWA office taking the working agreement with World Class in Memphis at this point? Well, Mr. Sign Guy, at this point, very serious. As we just spoke of, they did have joint television tapings with the two, and they are leaning more and more on Memphis for dates for their talent. I think that Vern, or it's perhaps Greg more so, they knew the benefits and the needs of working with other promotions in order to survive and to get talent. So I think at this point it's very, very serious. Whether the AWA is acknowledging they need help or whether they just think they're doing something spectacular in the flavor of the old Pro Wrestling USA, though it is a very serious unity here on the part of these three. Russ Styles on Facebook asks, why didn't the AWA use Lance Russell and Dave Brown for the tapings in Memphis? Well, I believe it's because the AWA wanted to maintain the announcers that they had signed and the consistency of their past shows. They didn't want their TV product to just feel like they were showing a Memphis tape, but it was their promotion in a new filming location with some new talent, and I think it's all about the consistency and the perception for them, right? They want it to still feel like an AWA product, just maybe new and exciting with some new talent and such, but all the backbone and the bells and whistles of their usual product is still there. So, all right, that wraps up the AWA for September of 1988. Hopefully you enjoyed that, guys. Make sure you follow me on social media. I'm on pretty much any platform. All you got to do is look up either Nostalgic Dave Dynasty or The Dave Dynasty. Go check out all the WrestleCopia networks of podcasts. They're all great shows that shine a light on wrestling history. You can look them up on your favorite podcast platform or go to WrestleCopia.com. Also, be sure to check out my friends at the Ultimate Classic Wrestling Library. Go to ClassicWrestling.net or download the Ultimate Classic Wrestling app on all of your smart devices. Now, my next episode, my guest will be Jeff Lean. He is the author of The Queen of the Ring, Sex, Muscles, Diamonds, and the Making of an American Legend, the book about Mildred Burke. We talk about Burke, we talk about the book, and we talk about the upcoming movie, Queen of the Ring, that is based on the book, so be sure to not miss that next episode. In the near future, we'll also have another part of our Calgary Wrestling 1988 deep dive. Many of you have asked about it. It's still planned to come, so stay tuned for that. Thank you to all of you listeners and supporters for all your follows, your interactions, your shares, everything you do to support Wrestling Nostalgia. It is very much appreciated. Please continue to support us. Please continue to support the other shows on the WrestleCopia Network's podcast. And thank you very much. So let's get out of here. Guys, thank you again. And wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and always keep on growing.
Fans, we brought you All-Star Championship Wrestling. This is Sam Manager thanking you for being with us and saying until next time, so long everyone.
Wrestling Nostalgia is copyright Dave Dynasty. Bruiser voice done by John Lawson.